Let's move on. We're going to talk now about Switch. I will say this. Switch is not getting as much airtime in GameFace as it has for the last couple years. I've mentioned it in the last couple shows that things are really kind of starting to slow down. And Nintendo has tried to take the brunt of that, take the edge off of that by re-releasing old games. And most of them have been Wii U games that they would then retitle as whatever deluxe and then release it on Switch. However, Xenoblade Chronicles is a little different, and that's because it was originally a Wii game and not a Wii U game. And the title is not Xenoblade Chronicles Deluxe, it's Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. This game, how many years old is this? At 11?
10.
Older. 10. It's a decade old. It was also ported to the 3DS, and if you remember...
Not tremendously successfully, but yes.
Yeah, well, it ran at like 10 frames a second.
Yeah, it was rough.
And at that, you had to have the hyper-powered 3DS with the little analog nub to even play it.
Yeah,
so
one of the few only on new 3DS games.
Yep, it was one of the few. And so very few people played that because nobody had that version of the 3DS.
Look, man, I love this game, and I only got like an hour into that version. It's painful to play.
It's pretty much unplayable, yeah, for the most part. So Nintendo did us all a solid, and it has... I don't know how to describe it, if this is a remaster or it's a remaster.
It's a remake.
Is it a remake?
100%. They remade the whole game in the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 engine.
Did they?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what this is the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 engine.
So
that's why all the character models are different. All the landscapes are the same but different. Like they rebuilt the entire game in the new engine.
Okay, so this is a remake then. This isn't just a remaster.
They didn't change anything that I can.
Well, they did.
See. They changed some stuff.
Prologue now. They've changed a lot of stuff.
There's an epilogue. The prologue's the same, but that's a separate thing you have to pick from the menu.
Yeah, and they tell you to wait till you finish it before you jump in.
The main game is pretty much the same right down to the animation choices. Although the facial animation is much better in this. Because
menus way better.
Yeah, they improved a lot of that. They improved a lot of the quest tracking. It's a more playable game now.
Oh my gosh, it's like, to me, it's like night and day. And one thing we should say before we start discussing this in depth is that Xenoblade Chronicles was one of the highest reviewed games on the Wii. It was top 5 easily, and it was only in the top 5 because you had games like Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2 that are in there with it. So it was reviewed extremely highly. So, and I did play it back then. I think I actually played the European version.
Yeah, I imported the European version.
Yeah, and you can tell that this game was localized in Europe because they, like, the text says like whilst and like,
yeah, it's very British, and all the voice actors are British stage actors, which is nice because you haven't heard them before 1,000 times.
Yeah, for sure. And so I did play it back then, and it was a gigantic game then. It's a gigantic game now, and I had forgotten how good this game is. Not completely, because I did remember it was one of the best games on Wii. I remembered certain key plot points from it, but a lot of it I had completely forgotten, and I have been completely blown away by this game. This game is freaking amazing. Yep. It deserves every accolade it has ever received. And I will say this too, this remake is great. They did it looks way better than I ever thought it was going to.
Like it's actually titled correctly. It is the definitive edition.
It absolutely is. And I had forgotten how cinematic the game was. Like, I didn't remember the original having as many cinematics and cutscenes and voice acting as it has. And all the cutscenes, very well directed, very well shot. I will say this. Very
little wasted space. Like, that's one of the things that I keep like coming back to playing this after playing Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah.
There's no weird pausing. There's no weird grunting. There's no weird, like, the conversations don't last 5 lines longer than they should because everybody feels they need to restate what was already said in the scene over and over again, like they do in Final Fantasy VII and Square stuff. Like, it's just they get the information across. It's a normal human conversation. Nobody goes over and over, and like they just fucking get on with it. Like it's great.
This game is so much better than the Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's like they're just different classes.
Well, I think Xenoblade, even before this, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is one of the best JRPGs ever made. It would make my top 25 of all time list easily. It's this is, I've been waiting for this for months. It's the one upside of the quarantine being extended into June was like, well, at least I can play Xenoblade in a couple of weeks. And I've really been enjoying it. I played this game twice fully before. I played it on the Wii when it came out, and I played it on Dolphin emulator. I think this is better. I know people are saying that it's better to play it on Dolphin even than the remake because on Dolphin it's like you can get 4K and like 60 frames per second and stuff, and that's true, but it still don't look this good. Like you don't have the redone character models and the redone facial animation. This is a better experience, I think.
It's amazing. It's a great game.
And the streamlining of the menus, like and the quest stuff, and
the
how
quality of life stuff is so
all that stuff is great, to the point that I am comfortable finally telling people that don't play a lot of games like this, you need to play this game.
Yeah, because one thing I do remember about the first game is at a certain point I stepped away from it for a few days, and then I went back to it, and I felt completely lost.
Where am I?
I was like, where am I supposed to go? What am I? And like just
and there's no hints, and there's
and
now this one, all you do is pull the right trigger, and it pops up the main quest and your whatever side quest you're on, and tells you exactly what you need to do, and it's great.
Yep, and everything about this game is great. The story is freaking amazing. Mm-hmm. Like I had forgotten how good it was. The writing in this is really good. Even after I had played it years and years ago, I still had forgotten about one of the plot twists and was like blown away again by the plot twist. Like, it's nobody in the game is sacred. Anybody can die. It's just amazing. The combat. Let's talk about the combat, because there's really no game like it, to be honest with you. Can you think of another game that plays this way?
Well, I mean, Xenoblade 2.
Well, yeah, but
like, I mean, it's somewhat derived from Final Fantasy 12.
Is it?
Yeah, the kind of the MMO style, like semi-real-time auto-attacking combat. Like, it's not super far off that, but this is a more direct interaction in the sense of like, being to the side and being behind the enemies does different damage depending on what your moves are, and like trying to, it's just like Xenoblade 2 Chronicles 2 in the sense that you're trying to combine moves that do the break, and then you can topple them, and then you daze them, and you try and like synergize everybody's special moves to like get an advantage over the enemy. I think the thing that this game does better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is Xenoblade Chronicles 2's battles last for frickin' ever. Like, they just go, like, you're still doing the same thing, but you're doing it over and over and over and over. Yeah. Whereas, like, if you can topple even a powerful enemy in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, like, you're probably going to win after that topple. Like, you do extra you got him, basically. Yep. But, like, I went back to Xenoblade 2 like a month or two ago just to kind of, like, refresh. And, like, even like random fights, like not like boss fights, not story fights, just like got in a fight with a couple of tigers on the way somewhere. The fight's like 5 minutes long. Like, I'm knocking them over 14 times, and I'm just like, get on with it. Like,
no thanks.
And you're like, yeah, eventually, like, I was looking up stuff. Am I doing something wrong? And people are like, oh, early on until like 30 or 40 hours in, you're gonna have a problem doing stuff. You just want to avoid them if you can. Don't only have fights that you have to fight. And I'm like, that's no way to do that. And especially because like the strength of the Xenoblade games is exploration and the world. Like, the world that all three of the games create is fascinating and interesting to run around in. I think Xenoblade Chronicles X does it the best, just because it's so huge and weird and alien, and you get the mech to fly around and do all that. I mean, I do hope Xenoblade Chronicles X gets a Switch port at some point, like a port or a remake, whatever they want to do. You would kind of lose something by having to put all the gamepad stuff on screen, sort of the way Wonderful 101 did. Mm-hmm. But it would be better than leaving that game trapped on the Wii U, I think.
Yep. So before we get too much further, I do want to explain like the basics of how the combat works. So as Matt said, your basic attack, and if you're playing a Shulk, that's a sword swipe, is on like a cooldown, and it just happens automatically. And so if you stand still, your guy's just going to attack with his sword on a time to beat.
It's like an MMO.
Yeah, a little bit.
Warcraft.
And then while you're waiting for that cooldown, you can strafe around the enemies, because it also, as Matt said, different attacks have more power based upon your orientation to the enemy. So if you attack from behind, you'll get bonus damage, or some of them, if you attack from the side, you get bonus. Some, if you attack from the front, you get bonus damage. So the positioning is very important. And then along the bottom of the screen, you have like a list of all your attacks, and they're called arts. And basically all you're doing during combat, I don't even look at the screen a lot of the times when I'm in combat in this game, to be perfectly honest, because what you're doing is you're selecting your attacks from the bottom. And as Matt said, the order matters because you're trying to essentially disable the enemy and quote unquote knock them down. And there's a couple different ways that you can do that. And it's more likely to do that if you are using your attacks in smart order. Another thing that you may want to do is if you have like one art that buffs your attacks, you probably want to fire that off before you select your attack that does the most damage. So after you've toppled somebody, you want to select that one that buffs your attack, then choose your biggest attack, massive damage. And it goes deeper than that because you can start chaining your attacks with your teammates. So there's a big thing in the center at the bottom of the screen. And typically that tells you when you can use your special sword that works especially well on mechanical enemies. And I'm trying not to spoil any of the plot. But also, that is also the same space that tells you when you're ready to do a chain attack. So you can cycle down, get to that, hit A, and then you start selecting attacks from each individual member of your party. And if you choose the same orientation or the same colors, then they get there's so many layers to this game. But I would say this. I have never really had to use positional combat. I've made it through the whole game just attacking every enemy dead on. I could probably do it faster if I bothered to go to the side for the attack that does better on the side or go behind. But the game in general is really easy. Would you agree with that, Matt?
It depends on what you're attacking and what you're fighting. Like in general, if you stick to the main story or you stick to kind of the beaten path and don't attack the level 80 guy that's wandering around the open field, yeah, you're not going to run into too many problems. I think some of the bosses get a little more challenging once you get into the realm. Once they unlock the time vision thing. Yeah. Where like because one of the features of the sword that Shulk uses, the Minato, which is a kind of the amazing magic sword that is rumored to be the sword that the Bionis, the big god of bio life, used to destroy the Mechonis. Takes place
on a Titan. So the whole game, you're actually on this gigantic creature, and the quest is to go from the bottom of the creature up to its head.
And well, you got to get over to the Mechonis because there's two creatures that like there's a Bionis and Mechonis. One's like made of biomaterial. The other is a mechanical thing, and the mechanical creatures from the Mechonis are invading your Bionis, your Titan. And so you're kind of going up. The initial thing is to go up there, up to the knee. I mean, they all know what they live on. Like they're all saying, like, we'll go up to the Bionis.
Live on the leg.
And they go up, and like eventually you got to get to where the big fight happened like a year ago, which was on like the Mechonis' sword is stuck in the Bionis' like torso. Yeah. And so that's like a bridge between the two, and that's where a lot of the fighting happens in the war between the Mechonis and the people who live in the Bionis, the Mechons. Yeah. And Shulk's sword is like the only thing that can defeat the Mechons, basically. That's
what I was hinting at earlier.
That's what he's after. The other thing, one of the other things he can do is he can see it through time. Like he can see the immediate future.
Ahead of time. Yeah.
And they use that in the story a lot. There's a lot of like, he thinks this person's going to get killed by this thing, so he has to change the future. But it also functions.
Some great writing around that, by the way, Matt. There are a couple scenes around that where he sees a vision where I was like, wow, this is Xenoblade Chronicles. Like that scene actually had some heft to it. Wow.
Yeah, they use that real well. And, but they also use it as a gameplay element where if an enemy is going to fire off a really damaging or a deadly attack, you'll see it, like he'll see a vision of it happening, and then you'll have a certain amount of time to do something that will counteract that attack. And there's like 3 different kinds of attacks that can throw at you in 3 different specific ways to counter them. And so that kind of leaves you, and like, or you can go over and warn the person that's going to get hit by it, and then you can you take control of them and can like kind of pick. So you have to, so you have to either move them out of the way or know that they have a move that could defeat that, and when like Shulk doesn't, that kind of thing.
Or you can take control of Shulk and just pile on damage on the enemy so that it interrupts the attack.
You can do that with certain attacks, So there is a paper rock scissors element to kind of how you get out of those situations, and that only really happens with more powerful enemies and bosses. So like, but it is a way to kind of like. I like it because it changes things up and keeps you on your toes in a game that is fairly easy when you're talking about just fighting the general trash enemies. Yeah. And B, like it actually takes a fairly like powerful and complex element of the narrative and turns it into a functional and interesting gameplay element, which like doesn't happen a lot in these games.
More often than it does. Yep, absolutely. I agree. I will say I have fallen in love with this game again. I was like, okay, I'm probably going to play it for 4 hours just to check out all the improvements and the changes. I kind of knew where like the first big pivotal story beat was, and I was like, I'll play to there. And no, like I got to that and I just blew right past it and just kept going. I'm now over 20 hours into it again. And so
first night it came out, it went live, I think at 9 p.m. our time, and I played it till 4 a.m.
It's great.
I haven't done that. Like, I haven't played anything till 4 a.m. since this lockdown started. I just haven't had it have the interest in me, but it's the first game probably in months that I've really held my attention. I stuck with the whole time.
It's great. Go buy it. Go buy it right now. If you own a Switch and you don't have anything to play right now, go buy it. You don't. We all know nobody has anything to play right now. I wholeheartedly recommend this RPG, especially if you like JRPGs. Although I would also argue that this isn't really like the stereotypical JRPG. It doesn't feel like it to me. The art style does. And I will say this, my wife was in the room while I played it for many, many hours over the weekend. And she said to me, she goes, "What is this game?" And I was like, "It's Xenoblade Chronicles." I knew she had no idea what that meant. And she goes, "It sounds like an old game." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "I don't know. It just sounds like one of the games you played back in like the 90s. And I was like, "Interesting. Okay." I didn't know how to process that. But I don't feel that way. Like it definitely doesn't feel like an 11-year-old game. Like, again, I'm enjoying it more than the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which just came out. So I highly recommend it. I know a lot of you guys maybe are too young to where the Wii just kind of passed you by, or maybe games like that when you were that age didn't interest you.
Well, it was also like it was a weird release because it came out in 2010 in Japan, and I think later that year, maybe 2011 in Europe. But in America, Nintendo of America never planned to bring it here, and then that Operation Rainfall thing happened, and that got Reggie off his ass, I guess, to do that. And they did eventually bring it here in 2012, 2 years after it came out in Japan. But it was a GameStop exclusive here, and like a lot of people didn't even know it came out because they didn't advertise it properly. It was a weird. If you're in America, there's a pretty good chance you never got to play Xenoblade Chronicles 1.
And you definitely didn't play it on the 3DS. So
I hope you didn't, because it was terrible.
Yeah.
But this is your chance. This is by the best it's ever been. I know like there's been like weird stuff about how like the resolution's bad or low or something, or like I haven't seen it. Like I
didn't see it either.
Like on handheld, it's like it drops to 540 sometimes.
We didn't even bring that up actually. On handheld, it does look terrible. I mean, I would never play a game like this on handheld anyway. Like,
I mean, I don't use handheld for stuff in it, but I will say
characters are too small. The text is too small.
It's sub 1080p most of the time, even docked. But so was Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Like it's the same. It runs pretty much the same as 2 did, and I thought 2 looked good. I hate Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I thought it looked fine the whole time. And this looks just as good and doesn't have all the stupid anime waifu crap in it. So it's not as embarrassing. I don't think it's embarrassing to play in front of people, unlike 2 and arguably X, because X does have a little bit of an afternoon anime series to it.
The only embarrassing part of playing this game, and it wasn't like that with my wife. It wasn't like she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're playing this." And I didn't feel that way either. But one thing that was embarrassing is there's a female character in the game, and you're constantly like getting new armor and gear to upgrade your characters with. And I got to a point in the game where the most powerful armor that she could have was a black bikini. And that's it. And literally for the next 7 hours after I got that black bikini, I never got armor that was more powerful. It's like the game forced me to put her in a black bikini for like 4 hours.
Well, you can just change the cosmetic look.
Yeah, you can change the color or whatever.
Well, no, you can completely change everything.
Well,
yeah, you can basically choose the outfit of the armor.
Are the stats still all the same?
That's the whole point. Like the bottom section down there, that's new. That is new. The bottom section down there, where like you can change the cosmetics, it literally has every single piece of armor you've ever picked up in the game. You can switch them to visually look like that whenever you want.
I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of other people
in a black bikini for 5 hours.
There's a lot of other people that just put her in that black bikini as cosmetically forever. You know, there's people who are the opposite of us.
That's true.
But yes, there was a period where I'm like, I didn't use that too much because I do in games. I do like to use more or less the visual of the armor I have equipped. But at a certain point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give everyone pants. Like, because I hit that part not just with her, but with Ryan. Like Ryan, basically, his best armor I had for a while was like basically a Speedo. And I'm like, you know what? Everybody needs to be wearing pants. It's not that warm out.
Well, she actually ended up looking like Wonder Woman because they also had a literally tiara, identical to Wonder Woman tiara, and she has dark hair, shoulder length. She looked like Wonder Woman. That's what I told myself anyway. Mitch, you spent some time with this. You didn't get to spend a ton of time with it, but what were your impressions of it? And did you play the original back in the day?
No, I didn't play the original back in the day. I got about 2 hours in. I played 2 side missions, and basically where the B-roll ends is where I basically got to. But I enjoyed it. I've played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 before, and my best friend, I watched him play Xenoblade Chronicles X. So I have some experience with the franchise. The combat's it was good. I definitely am intrigued with the story, and so I'll keep playing it.
So Erebus Jones asked, if you only have a Switch Lite, is it worth getting? I would say no.
I would agree with that.
I do not play a lot of Switch games in handheld mode in general. I do use it. Like for Pokemon, I played the bulk of that game actually in handheld mode. Some games I do. But for action games, anything that has like a lot of text on screen that you need to read, I generally stay away from it. So in this game in particular, there's lots of text, lots of menus, lots of. The
I mean, if you only play Switch Lite, you might not notice.
That's true. Actually, you may just be used to it. For me, I would never play it in handheld mode.
But. Like, it's not ideal. I guess on the other hand, like if you have never played it before, you should play it.
Yes.
Like if you got a Switch Lite, like you should probably still play it. You'd be ready for like some squinting at the text and stuff and some of the menus, but I think it's worth putting up with that to play the game.
The other thing I would say too,
I'll reverse my position. I think it is still worth it. It's just not ideal.
The other thing I would say too is that the combat, as I was saying earlier, like you don't really even need to watch it, to be honest with you. Like when I'm in combat, I just look at the row of my attacks at the bottom and I'm just waiting for the cooldowns to finish and just ding, 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 bing, ding, ding,
like
ding,
I said,
bing,
it's an MMO.
Ding, bing, yeah.
That's how MMO combat. I know you don't play MMOs much, but like that is basically the combat in this is basically an MMO with single player, like down to like you got a tank and Ryan is drawing aggro and Shulk's hitting from behind for extra damage and you don't want to hit them too much or they'll turn around and attack Shulk and it's really very MMO, just like Final Fantasy 12 was.
The other thing we should add is this game, and we're not exaggerating, is like 100 hours long.
Yeah, it's big.
I have played 20 hours, and having played it before and knowing where I am, I'm not even 30% into the game. So
you get your money's worth.
Oh, yeah. Sure. And then, as we said earlier, they do add on a little extra section of the game that you're supposed to play after you finish the main campaign. I don't know if a lot of people are going to want to go back for more after 100 hours, but if you do, it's there. So it is a really, really good value and a really, really good game. The side quests also, I would argue, aren't completely inane and stupid. The other thing I like about it is that you can take as many side quests as you want, and then they all just pile up, and then you just totally subconsciously, accidentally complete quests throughout the whole game. You'll meet somebody, and you'll realize, oh my gosh, I got that quest from you like 8 hours ago, and here you are, and here's those things that you asked for. Please take them and give me my XP.
They also added a thing where, like, because there's tons of items to pick up, just like around the world, there's all these kind of weird little bugs and plants and things. And sometimes you need them later for a quest to turn in. Yeah. And in the original game, that was a problem because it just meant you couldn't sell anything because you didn't know what you're going to need later. This version, the Definitive Edition, adds a way for Shulk to, if you pick up something you might need for a quest later, like the game will give you like a flash forward of needing them for the quest, so you know not to sell them.
Yep. It'll show a little cutscene actually of them being like, I needed one of these.
So there really is a lot of quality of life improvement. Also, I may be wrong. It's been a long time since I think 5 years since I played it. like fully on Dolphin, but like if I remember correctly, you couldn't, like, if you get tons of side quests in this one and you go to an area where like a bunch of the side quest objectives are, the mini map and the main map will show you exclamation points for all the things you need to do. If I recall correctly, in the original version, you only saw the exclamation point for the quest you had active.
Yeah.
So you could be surrounded by stuff you needed to do and have no idea. So this game is much better about that.
Yep, it's better in every way. I wholeheartedly recommend it. I don't think you're going to regret buying it if you like RPGs. And if you don't play a lot of MMOs like me, the combat will seem really fresh to you. I did not pick up on that, though. And I have played MMOs. But now in hindsight, I can kind of understand where you're coming from with that.
No, it's very, it just feels like things are.
I haven't played a lot of recent MMOs, so maybe times it has changed, and I haven't played deep into any MMO.
I mean, ever. It's not like EverQuest, but it is like it's basically what Warcraft became, World of Warcraft became, and like kind of the standard MMO model is exactly what you're describing. Tank and spank is what they call it. Like, you're just looking at your bar, you know your rotation of abilities, you're waiting for those cooldowns to hit so you can hit the thing again and move on to the next one. Like, that's entirely what MMO gameplay is.
Yeah, I know. But do MMOs like link stuff together the way this game does? Where they do. Where
like,
you select in a specific order, you'll get more damage and stuff like that.
Yeah, with your own abilities and sometimes with party member abilities. Yeah, like, people. That's what the whole party dynamic is about. Like, you guys set them up. Then you hit them with the AoE, then some, more dots. Okay, enough dots, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's very much an adaptation of that, except, you can play the single player, and it feels a little more visceral to me in this game because, it's not as stilted as the average MMO is. It feels like you're really
combat in this game. You don't feel disconnected from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of having it be single player and having it all take place offline is you don't have to deal with matching everybody up so you're all seeing the same thing. You just
latency and all
make
that.
It work. But it was kind of a trend then. Like, there was sort of an experimentation in that direction in Japan, especially, of like, oh, maybe we could do MMO style combat in single player games. And it didn't really go anywhere because MMO style combat isn't generally very fun. But I think they did come up with something pretty special in this, and they have carried it forward through 2 more games, and it more or less still works. So it did seem to do pretty well. I think I saw it was when I was looking at the downloads on the store, it was like the number 3 or number 4 most downloaded game on the eShop.
Yeah, in the UK sales, it did pretty well too.
So I'm hoping this prompts more, and I think I'm hoping it sells better than 2. So they get away from the stupid hardline weird anime boob stuff and can just make a freaking video game again.
Yep.
Because this game, I think, is head and shoulders the best in the series. Especially
I'd agree with that. Yep, I definitely agree with that. And it's the first. It's supposed to get better as time goes on.
That's not usually how that works, but here we are.
It's really weird.